Hi everyone, thank you very much for watching or listening today. And today I have a very, very special guest, very inspirational guest on the show. Today I'm going to be talking with Gabriel Najera, if I got that right that time, an incredible inspirational and motivational speaker, originally from Mexico, now living in Texas, USA, published author as well, who has overcome a great deal in his life. When I was researching for this interview, I was just blown away by everything that this man has overcome, the inspiration that he shares, and the positive impact that he has on so many people with his talks, with his books, and with everything else that he's doing. So today we're going to be having a chat about his life and career. I love the slogan, "If I can, then you can too," as well. I've seen around. Like I said at the beginning, thank you very much for making the time for this, Gabriel. I really appreciate you making the time for it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Liam. It's always a pleasure to be able to share my story, no matter what part of the world it's in. And thanks to the technology we have today, I'm more able to expand my horizons to be able to uh, fulfill my purpose in life, and that is to make people more aware of the fact that everything's possible. You can live your dreams, and there is no such thing as impossible.
Incredible, a powerful message already, and I love that. And as I said to you, that's also what my channel's all about. That's why I called it Simply Inspired, because it is there to inspire people. So wonderful. So I think the best thing to do, with this, with people who may not be familiar with your story, is to go back to the beginning and touch upon, where you were born, your early life, and how things started for you. Because in your life, you've overcome a lot to get where you are, and we'll touch more on that later on. But let's go back to the beginning. Where were you born, and how did it start for you, please?
Well, I was originally born, like you said in the beginning, I was born in Mexico City back in July 13, 1966, which makes me 55 right now. I'll be 56 in July. But back in the early days, in the 60s, it was a totally different world, especially in third world countries like Mexico, where people with handicaps just didn't really have much of a future. So when I was born, just as I was coming out of my mother's womb, the first thing the doctors saw was that, I was born with no life, that I was born dead. Just because they didn't see the arms, and the legs didn't completely develop. I mean, I do have my legs to certain lengths, but and my feet are there, but they're kind of like turned sideways and upside down. But that still hasn't stopped me, even though the doctors predicted that. At first they thought I was dead, and they told my parents that I probably wouldn't live for more than maybe a couple hours or a couple of days, but they didn't give me a very long life expectancy. That my mother just simply, took me in her arms and said, well, let it be God's will, whatever it is that is going to be, is going to be because God's will. And so, as life went on, I did, of course, live past a couple of days and a couple of weeks. But life wasn't all that easy, especially in a world where everything was made for people with arms and legs. My parents, of course, didn't never give up on me, or never thought that I wasn't going to be able to make it. However, they did kind of have a little doubt in the beginning of well, if I was going to be able to live a normal life or not. So they tried to accommodate me in every possible way to make life as simple as possible. Of course, in the early years of my childhood, they try to do everything for me, such as, feed me and bathe me and clothe me and everything that you normally do with kids, but they, of course, try to do it past, just not just my childhood, but, into the adolescent years. Even though I always try to tell them, hey, no, wait a minute, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. But then, of course, the motherly instinct, is always to try to protect, to do for you and all. But eventually, I did end up finally just saying, hey, look, just, give me my space, let me do my thing, and, then you'll see that I can do it. When I was about 5 years old, my parents started noticing that, I did have a little bit of something else between my ears besides the wax that's in there. And they did notice that, I was starting to get a little hungry to learn. I wanted to be able to pick up books and, figure out what they said and, and why things work the way they are. And like any other kid would do, start asking questions. So my parents started to look for a school, figuring that, I was 5 years old. It was time for me to go ahead and start probably getting into the educational system. And they looked all over Mexico for a school that would take me, but unfortunately, that wasn't the case. All the schools kept, putting excuses as to, why, I probably wouldn't be able to learn just because I didn't have any hands. But I still didn't make my parents stop, looking or give up on the idea of me getting my education. And just as things will always, work out, my parents one day ran into a gentleman that had traveled from Houston, Texas, from the U.S. to Mexico as I was visiting. And my parents, just a part of the conversation, started, telling them a little bit about me. And this man happened to be the director of a very famous hospital in the US that was called the Shriners Hospital, that took in kids with handicaps and helped them, whether it be to do surgery on them or just create braces or, whatever the need was to help them, develop. And so they took an interest in my case and brought me to the States on the basis of wanting to make me some artificial limbs. And so they originally made me some artificial legs and some artificial arms, thinking that they would work. And it was, good intentions and well worth the try. Of course, I kept them. I had artificial arms and legs until I was 16. But mostly because of by request of my parents, mostly my mother, that always wanted to try to make me look, as normal as possible so that I would feel as normal as possible. But the prosthetics didn't really work, never worked out. I kept them until I was 16. And then at the age of 16, I said, okay, that's it. Enough is enough. They don't work. The arms didn't work because I needed to have the part of the shoulder that connects the arm, the joint, to be able to, raise the arm or, swing back and forth or whatever, extend the arm. So basically I just had these artificial arms that just kind of hung, on my sides. And the only thing I could do with them was flex the elbow and open the hooks. I had hooks for hands. And those two movements were made by these cables that were running from my chest and my back. And by expanding chest or expanding the back, they would, cause these cables to, pull the elbow and the hooks. So with that being, such a limited movement, of course, there was hardly much I could do with them. And then the artificial legs, they were okay for a while. I mean, they served their purpose. I was able to finally go out and walk on the streets, without, worried about hurting my feet, because I learned to walk when I was about 4 years old, but just around the house, barefooted. Of course, I never could find any shoes because my feet were turned sideways. One was kind of turned sideways and the other one's completely upside down. And so by not being able to find any shoes, then that limited my mobility outside of the house. Anytime I would go outside the house, someone would have to carry me. But the prosthetics came in handy because they were like these long tubes that I would slide my feet into. And of course, at the bottom there would be, the artificial feet with shoes. So I was able to finally, walk outside without being carried. But then that created a new limitation for me because as I was growing up, I learned to use my feet as my hands. And basically everything that people can do with their hands, I can do it with my feet. My feet are my hands. But when I would put on this prosthetics, my feet were tied. So it was like, okay, I can walk, but that's all I can do. I couldn't do anything else because my hands were tied. So needless to say, uh, like I said in the beginning, I kept them till I was 16, and at the age of 16, I said, okay, I can't go on like this. I need my hands, and these arms are just useless. So I went back to just being the way I was born. And that's the way that I operate and have been operating, the rest of my life, and have been pretty successful. As I was attending the Shriners Hospital in Houston, my parents were given notice of this school that was just 100 miles away uh, from Houston, from the hospital, in a small town here in Texas called Port Arthur, Texas, that happened to have a school for handicapped kids. And it was a real school. It was not just a place where, you go drop off your kid and, they just babysit them, for whatever. But it was a real school that had, dormitories where we lived there. I lived there with, other kids with handicaps, but I was given a full education just like any other normal kid would be in any public school. I lived there 9 months out of the year while my parents kept living in Mexico. My whole family stayed in Mexico. And I would go back to visit my family in Mexico for the summer vacation and the Christmas vacation. And so I was traveling back and forth, all the way up until I was about to turn 17. I was still 16 when I graduated from high school here in the States. And from there, I went on to college at a nearby college that was, in the next town over, called Lamar University, where I studied computer science in the engineering field and learned to do programming and all the basic stuff that you learn about computers back in those days. So after I finished that, then I was off to, kind of look for work. So I didn't have much of an opportunity in those small towns where I grew up, because there were small towns and there were refineries. Was most of the industry that was there, and not much I could do in the refineries unless you're a welder or can climb, tall scaffolds. That wasn't much of an opportunity for me. So I moved to the nearest big city, which is Houston, and that's where I currently reside. I moved here and back in 1986, 87, and basically just stayed here the rest of my life. Of course, when I moved here and started looking for work, that created a whole different scenario now, but very similar to when my parents were looking for a school for me when I was a kid, where I would go knock on the doors of the companies, and of course, I kept getting rejected because they would take one look at me and say, how are you going to be able to, program a computer, or how are you going to be able to carry one, or how are you going to be able to, assemble or disassemble, to repair, and all these questions. And I would say, hey, look, I can do it, It may take me a little bit longer than somebody with hands, but I can do it, And of course, people didn't see that in me, and so I wasn't really given the opportunity to get a job, as most people would call it, until one day I was like, well, if nobody's going to give me the opportunity, then I'll just create my own company, which in turn created more of an opportunity to market the company as a computer company than for me to market myself as an employee. So what I would do then is I would call up companies that rejected me to hire me as an employee, but I would call them up as a business and say, hey, look, we can do this and this and this for you. And of course, them not knowing who was behind the company, one company did accept my proposal to do a special program that they were looking for. And when I finished writing that software program for them, they were impressed to find out that I was the one that did it after they had rejected me for being an employee. And so it was at that time that they then offered me a second opportunity to write another program for them. And they also asked me if I would join the company and become an employee, to which I said, no, no, thank you. We can continue as, my business doing business with your company. And so we kept that relationship. And that became one of my best customers I had that customer for about 12 years in that particular business. My company in the first 3 years was already grossing about $2.5 million a year as a software company. And I started getting a little bit known, around as being, a good software developing company. So I started getting requests from other companies that had offices in other countries. So when I would fly to those other countries, the people in those countries would ask me if I could help them get, some special hardware and other pieces of software from the US. So that led me to start marketing computers and hardware and peripherals into other countries. So I developed a second company that was a import-export company. So I was now running two businesses at the same time. And then all of a sudden, the companies wanted me to start connecting or interconnecting their offices, the office in Houston with their office in California, or their office in New York, or their office in Mexico, or et cetera. And so I created a third company that was nothing but a networking company that created local area networks as well as exterior networks, which is what we now call the internet. So I could say that I was, one of the pioneers in creating the internet. Which basically is just a bunch of computers all interconnected. So I was now running three companies at the same time, when all of a sudden my customers started asking me if I knew anything about what this internet thing was all about, and if I knew anything about emails and how to be able to show their products on this thing called the World Wide Web, and then I was like, yeah, I know a little bit about that. And so they started asking me to, help them, put their products and services on the web. And so I created a fourth company that was strictly nothing but internet, internet-based company, web designing, e-commerce, electronic commerce, electronic mail. So I was basically running four companies at the same time here, and was doing pretty well. I did a good job of being an entrepreneur. I got that down to science, and I kept doing that for about 28 years. For about 20 years, I ran those businesses, and then one day I was at a car wash. By the way, I drive my own car. Just like I said, anything that people can do with their hands, I do it with my feet. So I also drive my own car, and have been driving since I was 19 years old when I bought my first car. And so one day I took my car to the car wash, and when I got my car back from having it cleaned, I got in the car and got ready to drive off, when this man came up to my car, and he grabbed my door, and he was like, wow, I can't believe it. Are you really going to drive this car? He said, I've been watching you since you got here, and I can't believe it. You're the one that's going to drive this. And I said, yeah, I'm going to drive it. I drove it here, and I'm going to drive away in it. And he was like, well, wow. I said, I'm 42 years old. He said, I can't drive. He said, even though I got my full body and everything, he said, I'm scared to death of driving. He said, I have a chauffeur, that takes me around everywhere, because I've driven my car 3 times, and 3 times I've had, a wreck. He said, but you don't have any arms, and your legs are so short. And he said, how are you going to do this? So I showed him how I had the car, fixed for me to drive. And he was like, wow, he said, this is incredible. He said, I'm a pastor at a church, just down the street. And I'd like to invite you over to my church, to come and give your testimony. And I said, okay, yeah, I could probably do that. He said, have you ever done that before? And I was like, no, never done that. It's real simple. Just get up there on the altar with me. He said, I'll ask you a couple of questions and you just answer the questions and that's it. Just be a little bit about your life and who you are. So I figured, yeah, well, I know I've done everything else, I guess I could probably do that. And so he invited me to his church. And when I got there, he told me that, by the way, he said, I had 3 services. You don't mind doing all 3, do you? I thought, well, no, I'm here. If I said I'd do 1, I can do 3. So I did all 3 services. The first service, there was about 80 people. The second service was about 500 people. And then the third service, there was about almost 2,000 people at the third service. And it was from that after each service, people would come up to me and thank me for sharing my story and told me what an inspiration, and would hug me real tight. Someone would be crying, and I realized at that moment that I could change people's lives. That by telling my story, people, I could see the change in their face and the change in their tone of voice. And it was from then that I started getting calls from the parents of kids that were at the church. I invited me to go to their kids' schools and talk at the schools. And there were people who were business owners started calling me and asking if I would go to their businesses and give a small talk. And then the word started spreading to other churches. So I started going to some of the other churches also and doing the same thing. And then all of a sudden I started getting calls from out of state, and then out of the country, from other countries, to where I got to the point that I couldn't continue running my other businesses. Well, it was a choice of either doing the presentations or continue with my businesses, which my businesses were very productive and created a wealth of income for me, but they didn't really feel the person inside of me. A lot of people think that if you have all this money, you can buy happiness, and then if you have all this money, that you can be successful and happy. But that's not the case, or it wasn't the case for me. I had everything that anybody could ever want, but I wasn't filled inside. At least not until I started doing these presentations and seeing how people's lives were changed. That's when I learned that we all have a purpose in life, and I had just found what my purpose in life was. And so I started selling off the companies that I had. I still have one of the businesses, which is my internet business. I still do a little bit of consulting on the side whenever I'm not traveling. But all my customers are very well aware of the fact that I do travel a lot. I travel all over the world, and I'm not available 24 hours, 7 days a week like I used to be. So with that in mind, I was telling you, hey, if you can handle that, then I can take on your business. But I used to have about 300 or 500 customers for my internet business, and now it's dwindled down to only 5 or 6. And that's because those 5 customers didn't want to let me go. And, they were like, "Oh no, please don't leave us. We'll do whatever. Just don't leave us." So I was like, "Okay, well, these are the rules. If you can live by my rules, then no, not a problem." So I kept them, and now I've been traveling all over the world. Like I said, I've written 2 books. My first book that I wrote was called "Smile My Way." And the second book that I wrote about 10 years later was called "If I Can, You Can Be Happy." When I started doing my talks, my speeches, they were mostly like a biographical speech, just telling my whole story like I just did from birth up until, that point in time. But then I realized that people wanted something more. They wanted to be able to leave there not only with a great story. I mean, because motivation is one thing, but when you walk out the door, a lot of people lose the motivation. So they wanted me to also teach them how to do what I did, to teach them, how to overcome what I've overcome, how to be successful, and how to find happiness and love and all the things that as human beings we look for in life. So I created my first presentation called If I Can, You Can. And that's my basic paramount, presentation that I give all over the world. If I can, you can. And from that title, I wrote, like I said, my second book called If I Can, You Can Be Happy, uh, because I'm working on 5 different books. My first one will Be Happy. The second one is If I Can, You Can Love. Third one is If I Can, You Can Be Successful. Fourth one and the fifth are going to have something similar about life. And at the end of when I finish writing the fifth book, I'm going to do a compilation of all 5 of them that'll be called If I Can, You Can Live.
Wow.
So, does that cover your question?
Yeah, to say the least. I mean, I've been sitting here for the time that you've been talking, just in awe of everything you've been saying, because um, it's amazing on so many different levels, and we don't necessarily have the time today to get into them all, but it's one of the things that really strikes me is your positivity. You have such a zest for life, such I don't even know how to put it into words, but you almost glow with the passion for what you're doing, which really comes over even across the camera here, thousands of miles away. It's a very powerful thing, and I love that. It answered my question. It answered a lot of things I had just on this piece of paper here. But that's a wonderful thing. Something I'd like to touch on and sort of hone in on just a little bit, though, is what I just said, is obviously considering the difficulties that you faced and what you've been through. It's amazing on so many levels what you've accomplished, physically with the books, with having a profound impact on people's lives, with your businesses, but also the fact that you enjoy what you do. I mean, you love it. So I'd like to touch on the mental aspect of this just a little bit, because there's so many lessons here for people. You've got discipline, you've got perseverance, you've got fortitude in some cases, of things you've had to overcome. You've got so many traits here that you convey, that you've applied in your life. Was that something that you cultivated over time? This belief that you can do anything. Did it grow as you had more successes, or did you always believe that from when you first started out with your own businesses? If you get where I'm coming from, I'd just like to touch on the amazing mental outlook that you have on life. I'd imagine your faith is a big part of this as well. But we've talked a lot about your life on the outside, and the only other thing I'd like to touch on in this is a little bit more of your life on the inside. If you get where I'm coming from with this, I know it might be a strange question, but that's something that really came over to me in what you were saying, is the joy that you feel, or the joy that you grew into with what you do. Can we talk about that a little bit, if you get where I'm coming from with this?
Yeah, I think I could touch a little bit on that. I grew up. I have an older brother. He's a year older than I, and my parents have always been very supportive of everything that I wanted to always accomplish. They never really held me back or try to hold me back. Like I said in the beginning, yeah, they babied me a little bit, about wanting to do things for me versus, allowing me to show them that I could in the beginning. But then as they started seeing that, hey, I could do things for myself, then they started realizing that one day they were going to have to eventually, set me free to let me go, because that's part of life. And I do remember growing up in my childhood years that my older brother, for instance, even if he was only a year older than me, when it came time for Christmas or birthdays, my brother would always get all these neat little toys. And when it was my birthday or Christmas, people would give me books because there were things that I wasn't able to play with toys because I didn't have any hands. So my mind has always been set to figure out a way to do things.
Mhm.
And my mind has never been set on, wait a minute, I don't have any hands. I can't do that. Or wait a minute, I need something special to be able to do that. And no, that's not the case. My mind has always been, okay, I want to do that. How am I going to do it? What's it going to take? You know, and that's basically the same way I still function today. When I was little, I wanted to play with the toys, just like my brother. So I would watch him, and see how he would do it. If it was a train or a car or something that you had to build and put together, I would watch him do it with his hands, just like I watched everybody. I was very observant all the time of watching people and seeing how they did it, and then my mind just automatically interprets, everything and translates it to my feet or any part of my body for that case, not just my feet, but I grab a lot of things, for instance, with my mouth. And whereas people would say, "Oh, yuck," you grab that with your mouth. Yeah, I grab it with my mouth. It's all in the mind, and it's all in the mindset. Of how you're taught to look at things and how your mind is trained to have to do things. In my case, well, my mind knows that whatever it takes is what it's gonna be. And so, yeah, my mind has been, with the support of my family, with the support of most of my peers throughout my lifetime, has always been that, hey, anything is possible. There's no reason why I can't do something that you can or anybody else can. And it may, I tell people nothing's impossible. It just takes you maybe sometimes a little longer to figure out how to do it if you really want to do it. The only thing that's impossible is whenever you say that you can't or that you don't want to do it. And that's the only time that it becomes impossible. But if you really want to do something, you always find a way to do it. So, the inside of me has always been, how can I do it? What's it going to take for me to do it? And a lot of people tell me that that I live for the challenge. If you challenge me, then you're more than likely going to get some kind of response. Because I love a good challenge.
Yeah. Amazing. It's incredible just to get the insight, just to highlight that a little bit so that, people can take away, that they can apply that to their own lives, and everything of that nature. But,
I do, excuse me for interrupting. I do a
no,
lot of personal coaching
mhm,
where people, look to me, because they've seen, the successes that I've had in my life. And so I get a lot of people, when they come to see me, first thing I tell them is, I'm not a psychologist and I'm not a psychiatrist. So don't come here expecting, me to write you out a prescription to solve all your problems. But I can try to help you sort, everything that's in your baggage so that your travel can be a little bit lighter. And so when people come to see me, they sit down and start talking. And the first thing they want to do is, spill their guts, and tell me all their problems. And the first thing I tell them is, okay, you've got 3 minutes. Okay, you got 3 minutes to tell me your problem. After your 3 minutes are up, I don't ever want to hear them again. And we're never going to discuss the problem. We're going to discuss the opportunities and we're going to look for solutions. Okay. But so you only have 3 minutes to tell me about the problem. And that's what I always tell people. And that's how my mind works is, I don't focus on the problem. I focus on the solution because I know that there's a solution.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's a powerful lesson. That is a powerful lesson. Is you take that time and energy that people would use dwelling on something negative. You take that time and energy, you focus in on something positive, and sort of transfer that energy, and the magic can happen. It's a very powerful lesson to apply to people, and that's why I wanted to give that a mention because with this talk today, we have a global reach. I know you travel all over the world anyway, but so people can have a few little golden nuggets there that they can take away. I know if people want to know more, they should come and speak to you because you're a very accessible individual to get a hold of. So I will put that out there as well to our audience. If anyone who wants to get in touch with you, they can, and please do. But we've given a really good insight into your life, into your mindset, and I'm sure I knew this would be the case with this interview that we've only scratched the surface with the wealth of knowledge that I'm sure you could offer. But in that case, it's fulfilled. What I was aiming for to inspire and help people, and then some. Um, and the last thing for me to say is just a big thank you for sharing what you've shared. I know you probably have so much to share, but for my release, this is perfect, and I really appreciate you making the time for this today. It's actually been an honor speaking with you, and I'm very humble, very inspired by. I've personally taken a lot away, and I'm sure a lot of people watching and listening around the world will do as well. The last thing I'm going to just say to yourself is if people do want to contact you, get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to do that? Just to give that a quick mention here at the end of this interview, please. What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Well, you can find me in most of my social medias. I've got about 3 or 4 Facebook or 5 Facebook pages out there. You can look at me by my name, Gabriel Najera, and that's N as in Nancy, A, J as in John, E-R-A. It's a Spanish last name, so it's not very common for English people. But you can look me up by my name and any of the social webs, and Instagram, YouTube. There's a lot of videos on YouTube. I do a lot of stuff in Spanish because the Spanish market became a bigger market than the English speaking market for me a few years back. So I have a lot of followers in the Spanish language. So you're going to find that most of my material that's out there is in Spanish. However, there is some English material out there. And of course, pretty soon we'll have this broadcast here that'll be available. That'll be an English broadcast. But yeah, you can find me by looking me up by my name, or my official website is ifican-ucan.com. That's my official website, www.ifican-ucan.com. That's where you can find my telephone number, my email, everything that you need to know about me, what I do, or what I'm doing now. And sometimes I'll post on there where I'm at in the world. Sometimes I don't because some of the events that I get hired to do are like private events. So there's no sense in me posting, my private events because nobody can attend them. But if I ever do anything that's public, like, people that sell tickets or stuff like that, for public events, then yeah, I'll post those on the website too. But more or less social media is where it's a lot easier to find me, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that should give people the options to contact you and get in touch with you, because I know what we've talked about today is immensely powerful in the impact I believe it will have. But obviously, when people can get in touch with you, they can really tap into that wealth of knowledge and inspiration that you possess. So it's wonderful to give that a mention as well. But the last thing for me to say once again is just a big thank you for making the time for this. In your day, taking time out of your day to do this. It's been a pleasure. I've interviewed some incredible people in my time, but this today has really blown me away. So once again, thank you very much for your time. It's greatly appreciated.
Well, thank you, Liam. Very nice to meet you. I hope that one day we get to meet in person. If I ever get to your end of the world over there, then I'll, give you a holler and see if, we can hook up. But thank you very much for this opportunity. I hope that, your goals are accomplished with, this interview, and that, if I'm able, I always say in every event that I do, whether it be, only 5 people there or whether it be 5,000 people there. I always tell people that if I can change the lives of at least one person, then I've accomplished, my goal in life, and that's to change people's lives for the better and to help people find their path and be able to, like I said, sort out all the stuff that's in their baggage. Because we all carry our baggage, we all carry our bags with us, from everything that we accumulate throughout life. And then we sometimes get to a point where we don't know what to do with all that baggage. And so I always tell people, if I can help you carry a lighter load, then by all means, that's what I'm here for, and fulfilling my purpose. And thank you very much, Liam, for this opportunity. And God bless everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.